January 1945, Western Europe. The river is swollen from winter rain. Cold presses through steel and canvas. Engines idle, not moving, waiting. At the center of the crossing stands a single bridge, narrow, exposed, unforgiving. If it falls, the advance stops here. Fuel backs up, armor stalls, momentum dies. For 72 hours, the bridge does not sleep. Artillery walks the river banks. Machine gun fire snaps across the span. Tracks grind forward, then halt again. Behind this crossing waits General George S. Patton's Third Army, fast, aggressive, built on speed. But speed means nothing without a way across. Holding the bridge is a unit, the Army rarely trusted with moments like this. Men trained to fight, yet kept on the margins. Men who know that failure will be blamed quickly and success remembered slowly. They do not know how long this will last, only that it cannot break. And as the pressure builds hour by hour, the fate of an entire campaign narrows to one frozen crossing and the war pressing toward it. Late 1944 into early 1945. By the winter of 1944, the war in Western Europe had entered a dangerous phase. Paris had been liberated, France was largely free, but the war was not over. Germany was wounded, yet still capable of sudden violence. In December, Hitler launched one last gamble, the Ardennes offensive. The Battle of the Bulge tore opened the American front and forced Allied commanders into emergency decisions. For weeks, supply lines fractured, units fought isolated, the weather grounded air power. When the German attack finally collapsed in January 1945, the battlefield was littered with wreckage and urgency. The Allies could not pause. Any delay gave Germany time to regroup behind its rivers. This urgency shaped everything that followed. General George S. Patton had already turned his Third Army north in one of the fastest operational pivots of the war. Now, with the bulge reduced, Patton turned east again. His objective was clear: cross the rivers of Western Germany before the enemy could stabilize. Rivers were no longer just obstacles. They were lifelines, defensive walls, and choke points all at once. Blow a bridge, and an entire armored army could be stopped cold. Patton understood this better than anyone. His doctrine was simple and ruthless: keep moving. Speed protected his flanks, speed saved lives, speed broke the enemy's will. But speed depended on infrastructure the Americans did not control. Bridges were few, roads were damaged, winter slowed everything. And as Third Army surged forward, one crossing became essential, not because it was large or famous, but because without it, the advance simply could not continue. That realization led commanders to place guards on the bridge who would not retreat easily, and who would soon be tested beyond expectation. The men assigned to the bridge. By 1945, the United States Army was the most mechanized force on Earth, and also one of the most segregated. African American soldiers served in uniform by the hundreds of thousands, yet most were restricted to labor, logistics, and support roles. Combat commands rarely trusted them with decisive ground. Armored warfare was no exception. Black tank units existed, but they were few, closely watched, and often denied opportunities to prove themselves. Their training was the same. Their equipment was standard. Their margin for error was not. Commanders measured these units not only against the enemy, but against prejudice already waiting for failure. When Patton's Third Army surged toward the German frontier, manpower shortages forced a change in practice. Casualties from the bulge had hollowed out frontline units. Every available formation was needed to hold terrain, protect crossings, and keep momentum alive. That necessity placed a black armored unit at a critical bridge, along Patton's axis of advance. Official orders framed the assignment as routine security. In reality, it was anything but. The bridge sat at the convergence of roads feeding Patton's spearheads. Fuel trucks, ammunition columns, and medical vehicles all depended on it. If German forces cut this crossing, Third Army's forward elements would be stranded east of the river. The men knew this. They understood the silence of the assignment, the absence of ceremony, the lack of attention. They also understood the unspoken reality. If the bridge fell, no one would say it was because the task was impossible. As winter tightened its grip and German artillery began probing the riverbanks, the bridge stopped being a duty. It became a test of endurance, discipline, and resolve. And that test would soon reveal far more than the Army expected. Hour 1. The first shells land before dawn. Not a barrage, measured fire. German artillery testing the riverbanks, searching for reaction. The bridge shudders but holds. By mid-morning, the pressure sharpens. Infantry probes from the tree line. Machine guns open across the span, raking the approaches. The defenders answer in controlled bursts, conserving ammunition, counting minutes. Orders are simple: hold. No withdrawal plans. No alternate crossing behind them. By nightfall, the temperature drops below freezing. Engines are kept warm in short cycles. Men rotate watch in silence, boots stamping to keep feeling in their feet. Hour 12. German fire increases. Mortars bracket the bridge. One hit lands short, another long. The river flashes white where fragments strike water. Casualties begin to mount, not dramatic, not decisive, but constant. The kind that wears units down slowly. The kind that makes time stretch. Hour 24. Still no relief. Enemy pressure is no longer testing, it is deliberate. The Germans understand what this bridge means. They push harder, committing more men, firing more rounds, trying to force a collapse through exhaustion if not destruction. Radio traffic grows clipped. Reports shorten. Requests become acknowledgments. Behind the bridge, Patton's columns stack up. Fuel trucks idle. Tank battalions wait with engines running. Every hour lost here echoes down the road. Hour 36. The defenders are operating on instinct. Sleep comes in minutes, not hours. Hands shake from cold and fatigue. And still the bridge stands. By the second night, the fight has narrowed to endurance. Not who has more firepower, but who breaks first. The men at the crossing do not know how much longer this can last. They only know that if the bridge falls, everything behind them stops. And as the third day approaches, German commanders prepare one final push, one that will decide whether this crossing survives or disappears into the river below. Hour 48. The attack comes just before dawn. German artillery opens in concentrated fire, no longer probing, no longer cautious. Rounds walk the riverbank, then climb the bridge itself. Steel rings, concrete chips away, smoke rolls low over the span. Under cover of the barrage, infantry moves forward. Not scattered this time, organized, determined. They know this is the moment. The defenders respond without hesitation. Tank guns fire point-blank across the approaches. Machine guns sweep the bridgehead in controlled arcs. Every round is deliberate. There is no excess left to spend. Hour 52. A direct hit damages the bridge structure but does not break it. Engineers assess under fire, marking stress points, improvising reinforcements with what little material they have. Men move across the open span to repair damage while shells still fall. No speeches. No hesitation. Just motion. Hour 60. German pressure begins to falter. not because the attack lacks force, but because it meets resistance that does not collapse. Radio intercepts later revealed German frustration. They had expected rotation, relief units, a weakening line. None appears. Hour 68. Fire slackens, then stops. By the 72nd hour, the river is quiet again. Smoke thins. The bridge still stands, scarred, damaged, but intact. Within minutes, American traffic surges forward. Fuel trucks cross first. Then armor. Then artillery. Patton's advance resumes as if it had never paused. The delay ends, not with celebration but with motion. The men who held the bridge receive no immediate recognition. No headlines. No communiques. But the outcome is unmistakable. Because the bridge did not fall, Third Army does not stop. And because Third Army does not stop, the enemy never regains balance. What follows will reshape the final weeks of the war and decide how this stand is remembered, if at all. Once the bridge is secured, the effect is instant. Columns that had been frozen in place begin to flow. Fuel reaches forward tank battalions. Artillery crosses and deploys within hours. Patton's Third Army regains its defining weapon, momentum. Within 24 hours, armored spearheads push deeper into German territory. Enemy rear guards are caught off balance, expecting delay that never comes. Positions meant to hold for days are overrun in hours. German reports from the sector describe a sudden collapse of cohesion. Units pull back prematurely, unsure where the next defensive line will form. The river, meant to buy time, fails to do so. Operational maps tell the story clearly. A single intact crossing keeps Patton's axis continuous. There is no pause to regroup. No window for counterattack. The men who held the bridge are rotated out quietly. Casualty counts are logged. Equipment losses are recorded. The paperwork moves faster than the praise. Their stand is folded into the larger advance, its importance diluted by speed. Patton drives on, focused on the next river, the next crossing, the next decision. But inside Third Army headquarters, the reality is understood. Had that bridge fallen, the timetable would have shattered. The cost in time, fuel, and lives would have multiplied. Instead, the line held. And because it held, the campaign remained intact, pressing relentlessly eastward, carrying the war toward its final phase. What followed would shape not only the end of the fighting, but how this moment would be remembered or overlooked in the years after the guns fell silent. In official records, the bridge defense appears as a line item. A secured crossing. A delay avoided. A successful holding action. The names of the men who stood there for 72 hours are not highlighted. Their unit designation appears without emphasis, folded into routine reports that celebrate speed and advance rather than endurance. This was not unusual. African American combat units in World War II often found their actions minimized, their successes attributed to circumstance rather than skill. Recommendations for commendation moved slowly, if they moved at all. Some stalled in administrative channels. Others disappeared entirely. Yet the operational impact remained undeniable. Patton's Third Army continued its drive into Germany, crossing the Saar, the Moselle, and later the Rhine. Each crossing built on the last, each success compounding pressure on an enemy already stretched thin. Historians later noted that momentum, not firepower, was the defining element of Third Army's campaign. Bridges kept intact were as valuable as divisions kept intact. Losing either could stall an advance permanently. For the men who held the bridge, the war continued with little change in status. They moved on to new assignments, new sectors, new risks. Segregation remained policy. Recognition remained uneven. Only years later would unit histories and veteran testimonies begin to restore clarity. After-action reports, once overlooked, gained attention. The pattern became visible. Repeated instances where black units held ground others could not spare forces to defend. This bridge was one of them. Not because it was dramatic, but because it worked. Because it did not fail. And in warfare, the actions that prevent catastrophe often fade faster than the actions that announce victory. As the war in Europe ended and attention shifted toward peace, this stand remained largely unspoken, its meaning buried beneath success. But history has a way of returning to moments that once passed quietly, asking what truly held the line when everything else was moving forward. 72 hours. 3 days of cold, fire, and relentless pressure. For the men at the bridge, it was neither heroic nor glorious, just necessary. Yet their endurance became the silent hinge, upon which an entire campaign turned. Patton's Third Army surged east, unstoppable in part because a single crossing held against all expectation. The speed he prized, the momentum he relied upon, would have faltered if the bridge had failed. History often remembers the victories, the cities taken, the battles won, but rarely the quiet stands that make them possible. This moment also reveals a deeper truth about war and humanity. Courage is not always celebrated. Sacrifice is not always recognized. And yet the impact of such acts is immediate, tangible, and profound. The men who held that bridge bore the weight of an army's advance, and the weight of expectations born from both war and prejudice. Technologically, strategically, and morally, the bridge illustrates the fragile intersection of human resolve and machinery. Tanks, artillery, and roads alone do not win wars. People do. Discipline, grit, and steadfastness, especially when overlooked, can define the course of history. Today, the story of that 72-hour stand serves as a reminder. Not all heroes wear medals at the moment of their triumph. Some are remembered in maps, reports, and the unbroken lines of an army that pressed forward because they did not falter. And in that unassuming act, the bridge and the men who held it saved not just a campaign but the lives and momentum of thousands, leaving a quiet mark on history that endures far beyond the echoes of gunfire.